अब अमेरिका की विभिन्न यूनिवर्सिटियों में से पधारे हुए स्कॉलर्स का यहाँ पर वार्तालाप होगा। मैं श्री हितेश भाई को विनती करता हूँ, सबको स्टेज पर आप निमंत्रित करिए और स्टेज व्यवस्था के लिए आ जाए। ये कुर्सी यहाँ रखनी है 4।
Namaste. Namaste. Again, it's my pleasure and my honor to welcome you to this, I'm calling it a Vidya Kutir, a hut of wisdom and knowledge. It's a great privilege to welcome all of you, Puja Sri Morari Bapu, all of our distinguished guests from India, the extraordinary scholars who have assembled here from around the world, and all of you in the audience. It's really an honor to be here with you. Thank you for joining us. I won't take very long. I think some of you may be asking, अरे ये भाई क्यों फिर खड़ा हो गया? तो मैं आपको कहूँगा कि गालिब ने कहा है, गालिब कुछ भी नहीं मगर मुफ्त हाथ आ जाए तो फिर बुरा क्या है। तो ऐसी बात है। मैं थोड़ा सा, if you give me permission, I want to say 1 or 2 words in Hindi. Is that all right? हिंदी बोलने का अवसर बहुत नहीं मिलता, कुछ भूल तो होगी, क्षमा कीजिएगा। मगर कल मैंने कहा था कि हम यहाँ एक प्रयोग कर रहे हैं। दो समाज, एक यूनिवर्सिटी के जो एकेडमिक विद्वानों हैं और दूसरा जो विद्वान जो प्रसिद्ध कथाकार कलाकार हैं, हम सब यहाँ साथ में आए हैं। तो कल मुझे कुछ प्रश्न पूछे गए थे कि यूनिवर्सिटी एकेडमिक क्या करते हैं, उसकी शैली क्या है। तो मैंने सोचा कि 1 मिनट में आपको कुछ मेरी टूटी फूटी हिंदी में कुछ समझा दूं, अगर मुझसे हो सके। तो पहले तो क्योंकि मैंने गालिब का कुछ बोला, तो गालिब का एक और शेर है, जान तुम पर निसार करता हूं मैं नहीं जानता दुआ क्या है। जान तुम पर निसार करता हूं मैं नहीं जानता दुआ क्या है। तो ये जो स्कॉलर्स है यूनिवर्सिटी में, वो शायद दुआ करते होंगे नहीं करते होंगे, ये प्रश्न हम नहीं पूछते, पर अवश्य ये अपनी जान, पूरा जीवन निसार करता है इन ग्रंथों में, समझने में कि ये क्या है, कहाँ से आया, इसके जाड़े कहाँ से है, इसके अर्थ क्या है, और सहस्र वर्ष की ये बात है तो अर्थ में कोई परिवर्तन हुआ, समाज कैसे परिवर्तित हुआ, ये सब चीजें वो देखते हैं। तो उनका लक्ष्य और जो भक्ति की दृष्टि से आते हैं वो बहुत अलग नहीं है, परंतु उनकी शैली, उनका चलन थोड़ा सा अलग है, क्योंकि उनका आरंभ जिज्ञासा से होता है कि ये क्या है, क्यों है, कैसे है, इसका प्रभाव क्यों हम पर पड़ता है। तो ये जिज्ञासा और इनकी शैली में जो प्रमाण है वो कुछ अलग है। तो प्रमाण क्या है और क्या नहीं, पुरावा क्या स्वीकृत है या नहीं, ये भी थोड़ा सा अलग है। मगर जो सब लोग करते हैं वो सारा जीवन इन ग्रंथों में समझने में और इनकी सूक्ष्म दृष्टियां, इनकी इन ग्रंथों की इन ग्रंथों का प्रभाव कैसे, कौन कौन सी युक्ति है इसमें, तकनीक जो कहते हैं, इसमें नवीकरण क्या किया है, इसमें सृष्टिकरण इनोवेशन क्या किया है, ये सब बात ये लोग ढूंढते हैं। तो मैंने सोचा मैं इतना कह दूं क्योंकि मुझे बहुत प्रश्न आया। तो और आज हम तीन विद्वानों का प्रवचन सुनेंगे। तीनों अलग अलग कुछ बात करते हैं, मगर मैंने सोचा कि एक मैं आपको उदाहरण दे दूं। एक जो प्रोफेसर पॉला रिचमैन यहाँ है, पॉला जी मैथिली लोक चित्रकारी जो कागज पर की जाती है उसके बारे में संशोध करती है, और वो प्रश्न पूछती है कि इसके जाड़े क्या क्या है, कहाँ से आए, कैसे शुरुआत हुई, क्यों कागज पर। और इनमें से इस शैली में प्रसिद्ध कलाकार जैसे गंगा देवी, उनके क्या क्या वस्तुओं का सामना करना पड़ा सिद्ध होने के लिए, और आगे जाते मैथिली कलाकारों कैसे इनोवेशन नवीकरण करते हैं इस शैली में। तो ये प्रश्न पूछेंगी। तो ये एक उदाहरण है कि विद्वानों क्या करते हैं। तो बस इस संक्षिप्त बात से मैं यहाँ प्रोफेसर जीना किम का परिचय करूंगा, और अब मैं इंग्लिश में करूंगा। Sorry for those of you who don't speak Hindi. Professor Gina Kim is a very good friend. She's Siddh or Prasidh, a very famous and a very accomplished scholar. She's a professor of art history at Harvard, and I'm very grateful that she has agreed to moderate today. I won't list her many works, but I'll tell you that the thing about her is that in her work, she has transformed the way we think about, for example, manuscripts. And she's also done some very innovative work on, say, women as judgment, as patrons of Buddhist manuscripts. So it's a wide range of work. And Professor Kim, please join us. So ये है जीना किम, प्रोफेसर जीना किम। जीना, Professor Paula Richmond, or Professor Rupert Snell, or Professor Philip Lutgendorf. I'll say to you that Professor Lutgendorf and I have been speaking via email for decades because he's also a great scholar of Hindi films, and he has one of the most brilliant websites on Hindi film.
नमस्ते। मैं सभी का स्वागत करना चाहती हूँ। आप सभी का आने के लिए धन्यवाद। मेरी हिंदी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, मैं पूरा अनुवाद नहीं कर पाऊंगी, लेकिन चिंता मत कीजिए। हमारे पास हार्वर्ड का मशहूर विदूषक है, हितेश जी। So it's such an honor to be here. It has been enthralling to watch and listen to the Ram Katha that to perform in the Sanders Theater. Look at this place. I have never imagined that I would see this space transformed so thoroughly that it provides a perfect stage for the performance of Ram Katha by none other than Morari Bapu. And this is not an easy feat, and congratulations to the Ram Katha team for putting this wondrous event together. So really, congratulations. So I'm an art historian of South Asian art, and I teach courses on South and South Asian art. And I'm not a specialist of the Ramayana, but it would be impossible to teach the art, a history of art of South and Southeast Asia without the Ramayana or stories of Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. And who doesn't love the monkey god, son of Vayu, Hanumanji? Or many fantastic demon characters, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Shurpankhana, and so on. Today's superhero franchises and movies pale in comparison, however fantastic their CG techniques may be. The vivid descriptions of these characters, the drama, the depth of emotions, the fantastic and mighty characters, 10-headed Ravana, the Rakshasas and Rakshasis, they're articulated and so spectacularly represented way before all modern digital tools. So in the Mewar Ramayana, for instance, we see fantastic characters that are actually visually represented. And of course, on top of all these action-filled plots and plot twists, the heroes of the Ramayana are incomparable. Rama is an embodiment of dharma, virtue, and ethics. Ravana is a villain, but also a great scholar and Shiva Bhakta. And ultimately, the story of Ram or Ram Katha is not just entertainment, but a transformative narrative as we are witnessing this week with Morari Bapu. And it also dawned on me yesterday while listening to Professor Sally Goldman's lecture on the recursivity and repetition as a structural component of Valmiki's Ramayana that the first full sentence I learned in Sanskrit was probably Rama goes to the forest. Ramo Banam Gachati, right? And conjugation of the verbs thereof, the past tense, the future tense, you know. So, Ramo Banam Agachat, I guess, if I remember my conjugations. And this is because my first Sanskrit teacher was none other than Professor Sally Goldman. And when I was first taking the Sanskrit class, I did not know this. But it's so only just sitting yesterday, I was like, oh, that's why we learn all these sentences starting with Rama. Professor Sally Goldman and Bob Goldman are the Ramayana scholars, as you all know. So I was also delighted to see yesterday Professor Fukuoka discussing many facets of the Ramayana in Southeast Asia. As the Ramayana in Southeast Asia is one of the connective threads that weave together my undergraduate lecture course. I teach a course titled Arts of Monsoon Asia, Interconnected Histories here at Harvard, where we discuss one of the earliest surviving visual programs of the Ramayana at Candi Loro Jonggrang at Prambanan in Java. Around the 9th century, probably less than a century later than the narrative sequence carved on the walls of the famed Kailasa temple at Ellora, and we discussed creative local adaptation strategies in Khmer empires at Angkor in Cambodia, for instance. So with that, it's an honor to be here to introduce this evening's speakers, partly also because these are the scholars whose works I read as graduate students and also assigned to countless students whenever I teach a course on visual narratives or seminar on women in South Asian art. You can guess how Sita would feature prominently in the course on women in South Asian art. So, our first speaker is Professor Paula Richmond. Professor Paula Richmond is a William D. H. Danforth Professor Emerita of South Asian Religions at Oberlin College and one of the world's leading scholars of the Ramayana tradition. Her research has explored the many ways the epic has been retold, performed, and interpreted across South Asia, especially Tamil-speaking regions. She's the editor of landmark volumes, including many Ramayanas, questioning Ramayanas, and performing the Ramayana tradition. Over the course of her distinguished career, she has received a Guggenheim Fellowship, multiple National Endowment for the Humanities grants, and fellowships from the American Institute of Indian Studies in recognition of her contribution to South Asian studies. Today, she will tell us about the lesser-known art of the Ramayana in the paintings by woman artist Mithila that Hitesh already mentioned at the beginning in Hindi. So please join me in welcoming Professor Paula Richmond.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly? Thank you. Okay. First of all, let me second what's already been said. It's an honor for me to speak at this Ram Katha by Morari Bapuji. And I want to thank all the people who organized this event. They all have full-time jobs other than organizing these events. And I'm really grateful to them. A couple of quick things, practically speaking. When I refer to one of the paintings that's up here, and I say it's on your left, that means when you look at it, it's on your left, and the same with right. Also, in such a short presentation, I could only deal with a small number of painters, but I think you'll find that there's a lot more out there than what I'm going to talk about today. Okay. Let's see. By any chance, is there anybody in the audience that grew up in Mithila? Oh, okay. All right. Is there anybody? Wow, great. Let's talk after the talk. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who has seen Mithila paintings? Great. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, thank you. Thank you. Okay. In such an august audience, I don't need to tell you why Mithila is important in the life of Sita. You know that. Just a couple of quick things for those people who are not that knowledgeable about the geography here. The kingdom of Mithila dates at least from the year 1027. It's also known as Videha or Terhut, and it's mainly northeastern Bihar and nearby southern Nepal. But the British partitioned the area in 1816, so I'm only going to be talking about what happened in India because of the handicrafts movement in India. Okay, so the first slide is an example of the kinds of ritual art that women from the Brahmin and Kayastha communities were painting in their residential compounds, and the painting was done on the walls. It was painting that made sacred the space where the ritual was taking place. And it was mostly done for either rites of passage, especially weddings, had elaborate paintings, and also certain lunar festivals that occur in the yearly calendar. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some wedding art, and I'm doing that because there are photographs of a wedding of the Maharaja's daughter. And that wedding happened in 1919, but the Maharaja was building a new capital that was in Ramnagar, and in between, in 1934, there was a major earthquake, and most of the royal palace was toppled to the ground. But for some reason, the nuptial chamber for the wedding was spared, and it was locked, and one retainer of the king had the key, and it wasn't opened for years. But in 1998, an anthropologist managed to track down the retainer, and he came back from being out of station, and he opened the door, and he let her photograph the paintings. So what you have here is one of the paintings, and I just want to give you a sense of what was the aim of those paintings at that time. Well, the artwork has symbols that stand for different things, but they're all associated in the paintings. What you're looking at right now is Krishna, who's always considered to be one of the most romantic deities. His flute playing, his beautiful blue skin, and also the fact that the peacocks are dancing with him is, according to love poetry, an indication that the rainy season is about to start, and when the warriors return from their battle, they rejoin their beloved. So it's a romantic symbol there. Then you see on the bottom half of the painting an image of lotus blossoms in the pond. And the way it's presented is if you were a bird and you flew over the pond and you looked down, you'd see these lotus blossoms. And those are considered to be the image in the mural of the bride, because the pond can grow many, many plants and blossoms. And the wedding is celebrated as a way for new generations to come into being, especially those that can be male and sustain the groom's lineage. And also you see that there's turtles and fish. Those are also symbols of abundant reproduction. On the side where you see this big set of branches, that's a bamboo stand. It's a symbol of the groom. And among these communities in Mithila, the genealogies of families can go back up to 6 generations. They've been preserved. And the idea is that the branches continue to grow and increase. So you've got a very rich set of symbols of fertility and romance. Now, when we go to the next slide, I don't think that I'll have to tell this audience that this is Durga and she's slaying the buffalo demon. That is, when the buffalo demon was doing his usual mischief in the world, all the gods tried to kill him, but not a single god could kill the buffalo demon. So the gods got together, and each one of the gods had something that they gave, a weapon and also tejas, or radiance. And when they took all of those things and they created a goddess and they gave this to the goddess, she had the power to slay the buffalo, a demon. So the sort of logic is, paint a picture of Durga in your wedding mural, and you will be protected by the goddess, and she will protect you throughout your conjugal life. So these are just 2 examples from this wedding mural, but I want to just ask you to look again at them and look at not the subject matter, but some of the, let's see if I can get it there. Notice that there are lots of borders around these images, and there'll be things in between the two lines of the border, and those are often a way that certain parts of the wall, one image is separated from another. And also over here, you see it in the arch around the goddess and along the bottom. Okay, now we're going to jump historically first to 1952. Pupil Jayakar was active in establishing the All India Handicrafts Board to encourage, publicize, and market India's handmade images inspired by the notion of Swadesh. So if we jump a little bit more towards the present, we come to 1965 to 67, when a catastrophic 2-year drought struck Mithila, killing crops, causing impoverishment, and creating intense food insecurity. Now, Srimati Jayakar had heard about the fact that there were these beautiful women's murals in Mithila, and she decided this would be a perfect project to make it possible for women to have some economic power and to make some money in a very difficult time. And back then, it was a pretty long way from major cities to Mithila. She got this Bombay artist named Bhaskar Kulkarni to go by train to Mithila with crates of handmade white paper. Why? Because in Mithila, most of the paper that you could get there was dark beige, and Jayakar thought that the white background would be more effective. And she had a plan for those. She was going to have Bhaskar Kulkarni urge the best, the most talented women painters to take the designs that they had been painting and paint them on paper. And then she arranged for their paintings to be brought to the Cottage Industries Emporium in New Delhi and sold there. And as soon as they were there, people just snapped them all up. They demanded more. Indira Gandhi became a patron. Lots of other people wanted these paintings, and it was a very successful project. Now, here's the question. When you move from painting walls in murals to painting on paper, what things come with you from the aesthetics of Mithila painting, and how does that affect how people paint? And I'm very happy to be able to talk about one of the most amazing painters I know. Her name is Ganga Devi. Jyotindra Jain, an art historian, has written an entire book about Ganga Devi, the most documented painter in Mithila. And she is the only one in this early period who decided that she was going to do a 2-sheet painting that would convey the entire Ramayana. Now, I'm sure you're already saying, the entire Ramayana? Not exactly. She had to be very selective. But it's interesting to see how this all happened. She came from a Kayastha family that was Vaishnava and vegetarian, and her mother was an excellent painter. In addition, unlike many Mithila parents of daughters in the 1930s, the parents sent her to school, even though she was a girl. And it was a school that was run right in the village by a Kayastha widow. and she learned to read and write. And after learning how to read, she had a nephew who helped her to read more and more so that she could read more religious books. She was a very religious woman. And when she got married and went to her conjugal home, something unexpected greeted her. The family that she had married into was deeply in debt because they had land and it got divided, and then there was less land, and there were all these reasons why when she went there, she was really experiencing food insecurity. There wasn't enough food. She conceived a child, a girl child, but it died very shortly after birth, and she never conceived again. After waiting a decade, some members in her conjugal family arranged for her husband to marry a second wife. And when that happened, she was relegated to sleeping on the veranda. Whatever wealth she had was appropriated. And from this period on, she arose every day at dawn, cooked for the family, fed the oxen, swept the courtyard, and gathered cow dung cakes for fuel. She said at the time, and I'm going to give you what she said and what she meant. She said, "In my in-laws' house, there is no Saraswati or Lakshmi." And what she meant is they didn't have any wealth and they didn't care about art. So this was a great disappointment for her. Finally, she consulted a Vaishnava sadhu, and he said, and I'm quoting, "Find peace if you make the image of God." And this inspired her because she had the training as an artist. And she began to join, whenever there was a daughter's wedding in the home, she would join the party of women painters, and she was known to be a great painter. But she also provided free embroidery classes for village girls and was very, very generous with her knowledge and her ability as a teacher. As a result of this, she gained a lot of respect in the village, and the neighbors started supplementing her food intake. And also, her parents were so distraught when they discovered the situation she had married into that whenever she got to visit her parents, they would send lots of food home as gifts, and gradually the family's position began to be better. So in the mid-70s, she decided that she was going to undertake this ambitious project of giving a pictorial basis to the Ramayana in using her aesthetics from the Maithil tradition. Every day, after she completed her morning chores, she recited 108 times the mantra that the sadhu had given her. She sang praises to Goddess Durga, and she read a Ramayana episode from Tulsi. And then she painted until midday. After a rest in the hot afternoon, she kept painting till dusk. Now, she worked very slowly and very meticulously. She used the style of painting that was prevalent among the Kayasthas, which was very fine black line drawing. And she drew on what she had painted in the wedding chambers. And in extended interviews that she did with Jain, Jotindra Jain, the author of this book, she revealed her perceptions of the story. First of all, she viewed her husband's rejection of her as parallel to King Rama's banishment of Sita. But at the same time, she had faith that Rama's divine power would help to lessen her suffering. So she, had these both of these feelings. She also admired Sita for her adherence to fulfilling her duties, because in some tellings of the story, she's banished and she raises her two sons as a single parent, with a little bit of help from Valmiki in the poetry curriculum. And she felt that that was admirable, under duress, when there are obstacles to persevere. And finally, she viewed her painting as a form of bhakti, or worship. Now, I know that what she did was she picked 27 episodes. She made a slight miscalculation in the sense that she had 2 sheets that she was doing it on, and one sheet was completely incidents from the Balakanda. So then she had a lot of other incidents that she needed to deal with. And we'll see how she did that in a minute. Okay, I want to give you an example. Here is Ganga Devi. She was meticulous. Everything that she painted very slowly. She would do no more than 2 or 3 small scenes in a month's time. One of the most incredibly careful paintings that she did is this one of 3 queens but 4 sons. And in order to keep the painting in a way that was symmetrical and even, she decided that the 2 first sons could have their own cradle, but the 3rd and the 4th would have to share. And so you can see that in the 3rd cradle, the other kids are lying down, but the 2 last ones have to sit up in their cradle and sort of enjoy each other's company. And in this painting, many people put their babies in some cloth and hung it on a tree or from some wood inside the house. But she said, these babies were born into a palace, so they must have beautiful cradles that are decorated with all kinds of artwork. And you can see, but even if you're too far away to see everything, I want to point out to you that at the top of the painting, the space between the cradles is filled with tiny black marks. So everything in the painting is imbued with this kind of care and meticulousness. And in addition, she makes a point of having the eldest queen be bigger in size than the other 2. So she's also, keeping in mind the social aspects there. Now, how are you going to do 27 paintings of episodes in 2 sheets when one is already full? Well, she ended up choosing episodes that sort of characterized the activities or actions in that khanda. And so it's somewhat, you could say, condensed. But every single episode that she depicted, she used that same careful, meticulous black ink. The only thing that was different for the second sheet is she used some red paint and also a little beige paint, I noticed, looking closely. Now, red paint was often used by some kayasthas to accent certain things like ripe fruit, beautiful pattern in a textile. And she tried to figure out, well, how do I move from having just, one painting to having a series of episodes that take place within an ongoing developing narrative. And I want to show you an example of how she worked this out in her mind. And let me just warn you in advance, I've broken up one of the paintings into 3 sections just to show you how it works. Okay, here we are. On your left, on your left, at the very edge, there's a golden deer, and there's red marks showing the blood that's coming out of the deer. And Rama is on the left, and he's already shot some arrows into the deer, and he's exiting the scene, okay? Now, right next to him, there's Lakshmana. And Lakshmana couldn't go after the deer with Rama. He was staying there to guard Sita. But when the golden deer was killed, remember, if you're a shapeshifter, when you shift your shape, you can do things that you couldn't necessarily do. And the golden deer, in its moment of death, called out for help from Rama. Now, at that point, Lakshmana said, oh, this deer is a phony, and, nobody could really be hurting Rama. But when Sita insisted that there might be danger, Lakshmana left. Now, Ganga Devi has done something really interesting. She has a branch that curls in between the heads of Rama and Lakshmana. Do you see that? That's her indication that Lakshmana left after Rama. Okay, so this is the beginning of the painting. Okay, here's the middle. Okay, now I don't have to tell this audience, the guy who looks like the elderly, itinerant, holy man is actually Ravana in disguise. And Sita, being a dutiful wife, knows that it is her dharma to feed the holy man. So she's gone to the cottage, she's gotten some leftover food, and she's about to give it to Ravana in disguise. Now look at the very last part of the image. Ravana parked his vehicle behind a huge tree branch. And if you go back to the previous one, Sita doesn't see it because she's looking the other way. So what Ganga Devi has done is she's pointed out that some things happen because other things happen. So Ravana could abduct Sita because Rama and Lakshmana were gone, but she's also set it up so that Sita doesn't know that, even though you, as the viewers, know that. Also, she was a very pious lady, and she did not want to show Sita being touched by this polluting Rakshasa. So she just put the Pushpaka Vimana behind the tree, and that's the end of that particular episode. Now, one thing that I want to point out, if we look at the whole now reassembled, is that what Ganga Devi has done is she's used 2 techniques that you find in the murals. First, she has, and the slide doesn't give you all 4 borders, but she has a border on the sides of the painting with 2 lines and then repeating patterns in it. Second, she uses trees, plants, shrubs, branches as scene dividers or scene guides to show you who's doing what when. I'm out of time? Oh, speak faster. Okay, all right. So this painting has one more painting. This set has one more painting, and that is the coronation of Rama. And I want to point out to you here that Rama is now, Sita and Rama are both looking straight out at you, whereas before, when they were part of their human life, they were all portrayed in profile because humans were portrayed in profile, but gods were giving darshan. Okay, I think I'm a little bit over time. I'm going to go a little bit more quickly, and I won't tell you anything that an audience like you would already know. 5 minutes? Okay. All right. Now, it was mostly women that became Mithila painters, but there were a few men that also decided to take up painting as a profession. And one of them was was born into a family of priests, and he did a number of paintings. He won 3rd prize in the first Mithila painting competition in Mithila, and he mainly painted things that had to do with battles or captivity or Ravana being dead. And if you look at his painting, there are 2 unusual things about it. First, he's the only painter that I've come across who paints on black paper with white ink. He really liked to experiment, and if he had an episode that he thought was important, he would paint painting after painting until he got what he saw as fulfilling his goals. And in this one, you'll see that on the left side, Ravana and Sita look almost the same height if you discount his 2 top matted hair layers, okay? And Sita's well behind the Lakshman Rekha, the line, but Ravana is very, very close to that line. And it's clear that he's barely constrained, and then he insists he can't move any farther, so she has to come to him as soon as she crosses the line. You move to the next part of the painting. There he is. Okay. His heads are huge now. They're towering over her. They're like way up in the right corner, and he's backed Sita into a tree that's the divider of the scene. And I don't know if you can see, but there are tears coming down from her eyes. I think what I'll do is I'll close with my final painting. It's by Rani Jha, and it's called Super Sita. This is all the stuff that we will miss, but let me go on with it. Super Sita was done in 2004, and it was part of an ever-growing set of expressions of Maithil women's desire for equal rights. It only focuses on Sita. She's the center of the painting. She isn't with her usual companions, her father the king, Rama, Lakshmana, Hanuman, Valmiki, or her 2 sons. And she has a duster in one hand and a bow in the other. And Rani Jha, when I asked her what was her intention in doing this painting, she said that when she was growing up in her house, There were lots of images of Sita all around, but she was puzzled because Sita was always standing behind Rama, or Rama was in big size and she was small. And she said, and the painter said, I heard from my grandparents that Sita was a rare lady. She was like an Amazon, so strong. And I looked around my house, but there was no picture of that Sita. And I decided I will be a person who fulfills that painting of Sita as a brave lady. And for those of you who want to look at some more of the paintings and talk more about them, tomorrow at lunch, I'd be happy to have anybody sit at my table and talk. And I have all these other great points that you will hear tomorrow, but not now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richmond. Sorry to rush you, but and we would be just sitting here wanting to look at these beautiful paintings, but I think we will have another chance, hopefully tomorrow lunchtime. So our next speaker is Professor Rupert Snell, and Professor Snell is a distinguished scholar of Hindi language and literature and Professor Emeritus at the University of Texas at Austin, following more than 3 decades of teaching and research at SOAS, University of London. And he's an authority of the classical Hindi traditions of Braj and Awadhi. He has authored and edited numerous influential works and is widely known for his Hindi language textbooks used by learners around the world. And in recognition of his contributions to promoting Hindi internationally, he received the prestigious Dr. George Gerson Award from the government of India. So, and today he will talk to us about the poetic spirit of Tulsi's Ramcharitmanas, and please join me in welcoming Professor Rupert Snell.
मित्रों, अपनी प्रस्तुति का श्री गणेश मैं एक पारंपरिक प्रश्न से करता हूं, यानी आवाज आ रही है? Four and a half centuries ago, Goswami Tulsidas began writing his Ramcharitmanas, destined to become the greatest vernacular poem of northern India. That poem has brought us all here this week to consider the Ramayana from various different angles, but mainly Bapuji ki katha ka rasasvadan karne ke liye. I'm grateful to the Ram Katha group for inviting me to this unique event. It is an honor and a delight to be here. Back in 1974, the Kathavachak, Pandit Kapindraji, came to London University to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the Manas. I was a student struggling to learn Hindi and with nothing more than a Chanchu Pravesh in Braj Bhasha and Awadhi. But I was thrilled by the power of Kapindraji's Katha and by his infectious delight in the poetry. Our facilities in the university were not good, and poor Kapindraji had to sit on a table to recite. As he climbed up there, he joked, "यूं मेज पे चढ़ते हुए मुझे बंदर जैसा महसूस हो रहा है।" तो एक सज्जन ने ठोंका, "कपिंद्र जी, आप तो बंदरों के राजा हैं." A lovely moment cherished in my memory. I soon came to see that the text itself, while profound and devout, was also full of wit, joy, hope, and humor. I was completely won over by it, and I have now been a devout reader of the Manas for over half a century. Just as the mighty Hanuman can shrink to the size of a mosquito, so too the epic poem includes many small moments with an impact far beyond their size. I shall discuss 4 such passages to show the art of Tulsi's writing as I understand it. Though we now have my friend Philip Lutkendorf's outstanding translation to hand, published right here in Harvard, I'm using my own translations today because I want to emphasize particular aspects of Tulsi's phrasing. Here are the 4 episodes I have chosen: Reading the Face of the Moon, The Chariot of Righteousness, The Art of Persuasion Through Prudent Words, and Rama, the Infant Prince, as described in Kavitavali. Reading the Face of the Moon. At the beginning of Lanka Kand, Ram and his companions crossed the newly built bridge to Lanka and set up camp on Suvail mountain to await the battle with Ravan on the morrow. There's a strong sense of fellow feeling, of comradeship before perilous action, as recorded in the war chronicles of many cultures since ancient times. Tulsi pauses the narrative to provide a jhanki of Ram and his companions, a moment of darshan, and he connects the story to the world of people, to us, his readers. Ehi vidhi kripa rupa guna dham Rama asin, dhanya tenar he dhyana je rehet sada layalin. So reposed Rama, home of grace, beauty, and virtue. Blessed are they who ever dwell in thoughts of him. With these words, Tulsi builds another bridge, one between the story of Rama and the happy state of those who follow its teachings. Hanuman and Rama rests with his head in Hanuman's lap as he primes his arrows. Hanuman and Angad blessedly massage his feet. Looking up at the moon in the eastern sky, Rama praises it admiringly and asks his comrades to explain the mysterious dark patches or stains on its surface. Sugriv says they are the shadow of the earth on the moon. Another companion says they are marks made by Rahu when causing eclipses. A third says that when the Creator took some of the moon's essence to fashion the face of Rati, Kamdev's wife, he left holes through which we see the dark sky beyond. Rama says they are the stains of poison, which is the moon's dear brother, for they emerged together from the Samudra Manthan. But it is the ever-loyal Hanuman who caps all this with the best answer of all. Kehe Hanumant sunahu Prabhu, sasi tumhara priyadas, tava murati bidhu urbasati, soe syamata abhas. Said Hanuman, "Hear me, Lord, the moon is your dear servant. Your image dwells within its heart and gives a semblance of darkness." Tulsi marks Hanuman's speech with a change of meter, Chopai switching to Doha. Ram as Antaryami in the moon's heart. Our poet delights in the intimate connection between Ram and Hanuman. Who but Goswamiji could frame this quiet moment so perfectly? Hanuman's character is imbued with sweetness and love, and carries a tenderness that is so much better expressed here in Tulsi's gentle words than in those giant concrete Hanuman images on today's skylines. Dharmarath, the chariot of righteousness. In Lanka Kand, the battle between Rama's forces and Ravan's surges this way and that, with both sides gaining and losing the upper hand in turn. But even here, Tulsi injects quiet moments into the thick of the drama. He adds finesse to the narrative with his image of a Dharmarath, chariot, an abstract chariot of righteousness. You know how it all unfolds. The two armies are ready for battle, and Tulsi gives the proud Ravan a little speech of just 12 words. Kahe dasana na sunu subhatta, mardhu bhala kapinna ke thatta, haum mari haum bhupadva bhai, as kahe sanmukha fauj rengai. Said Ravan, hearken, worthy warriors, mangle the mobs of monkeys and bears. Me, I'll slay the two king brothers. So saying, he had the army creep forward. Ravan's battle orders are brutish and crude and lack any subtlety or grace. He refers to Ram and Lakshman with the clumsy phrase, Bhup Dvobhai, not quite managing a word for princes. All this stands in stark contrast to the eloquent speech that Rama is about to deliver, showing the contrast between villain and hero. But wait, there's a key detail here that slips through the translator's fingers. It's in the word rengai, in Asakahi Sanmukha Fauja rengai. In Hindi, the verbs rengna and its causative ringana, from Sanskrit ringati, ringayati, depict a crawling or creeping motion. Tulsi describes the great Rakshasa army moving steadily across the ground like swarming insects, or like the orcs in Lord of the Rings. His phrase, Fauj Rengai, has a physical, tactile quality that speaks of the army's relentless approach over the earth. The whole landscape seethes as with a fearsome pestilence. But the translators replaced Tulsi's striking image with bland phrases such as, he brought his army forward. And even Hanuman Prasad Podar's sensitive tika renders the sentence dull and conventional. ऐसा कहकर उसने अपनी सेना सामने चलाई. Tulsidas uses the word Rengana only once in the entire Manas. And I make a fuss about it here because the detail of imagery should never be flattened and generalized. Let the poet speak. While the two armies prepare for the battle, Vibhishan notices a worrying imbalance. Rama stands barefoot on the battlefield, while Ravan is mounted in his war chariot. Ravanu Rathi Biratha Raghubira, Dekh Vibhishan Bhayo Adhira, Athik priti manabha sandeha, bandi charan ke sahit saneha. Seeing Ravan within a chariot and Rama without one, Vibhishan became fearfully troubled. Through excess affection, disquiet filled his heart, and revering Rama's feet, he said lovingly, we'll see what he says in a minute, but first notice how the actual form of, sorry, I haven't put the translation there. Notice how the actual form of Tulsi's line suggests the opposition between Ram and Ravan. The poet uses a chiasmus, a figure of speech in which one phrase is mirrored by a second phrase, as in Shakespeare's fair is foul and foul is fair. In Tulsi's line, the names of Ravan and Rama, the contrasted protagonists, are thrown to the outer edges, with the chariot words meeting in the middle. This manuscript illustration does the same thing. Here is the text, Ravanu Rati Virat Raghubira, Deki Vibhishan Bhayo Adhira. And here, I hope, if I press hard enough, and here is the placement of Ram and Ravan as opposite edges of the painting. The chariot problem disturbs Vibhishan deeply. In the phrase bhayo adhira, the word bhayo is Hindi hua, yani bechain ho gaya, bechain hua. But bhayo also plays on the word bhay and names his anxious fear. Addressing Rama, he stutters and stammers. All those ba words are Bidhi, Jitab, Bir, Balavana. Sorry, I think I'm losing myself here. Here we go. Nathana Ratana Hitanapada Trana, Kehe Bidhi Jitab, Bir, Balavana. Sunahu Saka, Kehe Kripanidhana, Jai Jaya Hoy, So Syandana Ana. Lord, you have no chariot or army for body and feet. How are you to vanquish a powerful warrior? Hearken, friend, said Rama, treasury of grace, the swift chariot that yields victory is quite other. Notice also how a question from Vibhishan triggers a pravachan from Ram, a homily. This question and answer technique illustrates Tulsi's Socratic method, which allows the poet to inject quiet meditations into the heart of dramatic sequences. It involves a certain ventriloquism also, because the wisdom that Tulsi puts into Ram's mouth is, of course, the poet's own perspective on the given subject. Tulsi Das speaks through Rama. The poet invites us to read narrative metaphorically. As Bapu told us on Saturday, Tulsi is fond of Sanketik Bhasha, or symbolic language. Goswamiji offers an extended metaphor in which the components of a chariot symbolize the various aspects of righteous character. Sauraja dhiraja tehirata chaka, satyasira dhvaja pataka, bal vivek dhamma parahita ghore, chama kripa samata rajujore. Gallantry and courage are that chariot's wheels, truth and integrity its bold banner and standard. Strength, discretion, restraint, and kindness are its horses. Patience, pity, and fairness the traces that yoke them. Each quarter verse matches abstract qualities to chariot components. The paired Sauraj and Dhiraj, which come from Sanskrit Shaurya, Dhirya or Dharya, are the chariot's two wheels. Bala Bibek, Dhamma Parahita represent the four horses, and so on. You may object here and say that the Raju Jore, the linking traces or chariot ropes, don't add up to 3, as I have promised, to match Chama, Kripa, and Samta. But look closely and you will find a dhvani lurking here, an implied meaning. Harness ropes are traditionally trigun in structure, 3-ply, made of triple strands. So there's our number 3. With such hidden delights, Tulsi teases our minds and charms our hearts. The art of persuasion through prudent words. Excuse me. Vibhishan is one of Tulsi's most intriguing characters. Having a Rakshasa as your elder brother is never easy. Not that I've tried it myself. And when Hanuman asks him about his way of life in such a family, Vibhishan says that he feels like a poor tongue trapped between sharp teeth. Sunahu pavanasut rehni hamari, Jimmy dasanani mein jeeb bichari. But Vibhishan's closeness to Ravan does at least give him the chance to oppose his brother's warlike nature. When Hanuman allows himself to be captured and Ravan wants to kill him, Vibhishan intercedes on the monkey's behalf. Here's the essential point. Vibhishan cannot give direct orders to his belligerent brother, so he cautiously suggests a diplomatic solution that will not antagonize Ravan and will free him from any blame. Nai siskari binaya bahuta, niti birod namariya duta, anadanda kachukariyan gusai, sabhi kaha mantra bhala bhai. Bowing his head in extreme humility, Vibhishan said, "It's against moral order. An envoy is not to be killed. Some other punishment should be imposed, sire." Everyone said with one voice, "Good counsel, brother." Neither Maria nor Kariya attributes any action to Ravan directly. These impersonal passive verbs, karma vasya kriyayen, do not mention the agent of their actions. They merely suggest what should be done, following the moral code about the treatment of prisoners, as in the Geneva Convention. Vibhishan's tactfulness shows the difference between a sharp "aisa mat karna" and a soft, mollifying "aisa nahi kiya jata bhai sahab." But this subtle moment is missed in the translations. They ignore Vibhishan's circumspection and have him challenge Ravan with unwisely direct commands. By the way, notice how Tulsi stresses the word bahut, describing Vibhishan's excessive humility, by lengthening its vowels in the rhyme cadence. Binaya bahuta. It's a lovely touch, typically Tulsidas. This same Chopai also carries an aspect of Tulsi's genius that is often overlooked, his ironic humor. The last quarter verse Sabhi kaha mantra bhal bhai, brings a fine comical touch. The spineless hangers-on who have followed Vibhishan into the presence of Ravan are too terrified to speak for themselves, but are quick to agree with Vibhishan's speech against violence when he said it. Sabhi kaha mantra bhal bhai. हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल, they seem to say. सही बात है सर, बहुत ही अच्छा कहा आपने, जय हो जय हो. In this way, the Manas includes many different modes of narrative, from battle scenes to quiet moments in which Tulsi gives us fine, glowing visions of divinity and grace. His Ramcharitmanas is a radically new telling of an ancient narrative, a poem to touch the lives of countless millions, bringing them a benediction, joy, peace, sadness, understanding, laughter, and comfort to gladden their individual lives. Though I'm an outsider to the tradition, I too feel its power. And my little Gutka edition of the Manas goes with me everywhere. Nij kabit kehi lagi nanika, sarasahu athva ativika, jay par purush bahut, jay par purush. Can somebody finish it for me? I've got it. Nij kabit kehi lagi nanika, sarasahu athva ativika, jay par purush. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. दोस्तों, एक दोहा कहने का मन है. क्षमा करें, ये दोहा गोस्वामी जी का लिखा हुआ नहीं है, मेरी अपनी रचना है. जब हवा चलती है, जब पवन बहता है, उसी को तो देखा नहीं जाता, उसका प्रभाव देखा जाता है. यानी जब वृक्ष की डालें हिलने लगती हैं, तो हवा का असर पहचाना जाता है. प्रसंग सुंदरकांड का. सीता जी अशोक वाटिका में बैठी हुई हैं, राम के विरह से त्रस्त. बापूजी, इजाजत है? आप न दीखत वृक्ष की डाल डुलाए समीर, आप न दीखत वृक्ष की डाल डुलाए समीर, सिया हिया पीरा जानिए कंपित देख शरीर. Now I come to the last section of my talk. मित्रों, ये आखिरी हिस्सा है मेरे व्याख्यान का. आप सूरज धीरज रखें. मैं आपका ज्यादा समय नहीं लूंगा. Rama, the infant prince. The long poem called Kavitavali is a beautiful and lyrical work on Ramayana themes that Tulsi wrote several years after completing the Manas, perhaps late in life. We shall read its opening Savaiya. The Savaiya genre in Braj Bhasha was all the rage in the late 16th century, and Tulsidas wrote some of its loveliest examples. Kavitavali is like a sweet Tumri song to follow the great sonorous rag of Ramcharitmanas. It begins without any kind of formality, such as veneration of deities or Brahmins, as we find in the Manas itself. Its opening verse, a description of the infant Rama in his father's arms, is spoken by an unnamed female devotee. The style is personal, intimate, and somehow timeless, as though the narrator herself might almost be sitting with us here today. In this manuscript, the scribe gives Kavitavali its alternative title, Kavitra Ramayan. Shri Ganeshaya Namah, Pothi Kavitra Ramayan Likhite. Reverence to Lord Ganesh, the book Kavitra Ramayan is written here. The text itself begins here with its first surveyor. It has the Anapest rhythm, like this, di da, short, short, long, short, short, long. A rhythm often used in English verse. As in this famous line from American poetry, "Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave." The name Tulsi, Tulsi, the three syllables of the poet's name, fit the rhythm perfectly. My translation, which I'll read after the poem, maintains the same rhythm, though word-greedy English needs 8 lines to convey what Tulsi's Brajbhasha manages in 4. Avadhe se ke dware sakare gayi sutta goda kai bhupati lene kase. Avaloki hon socha bimochana ko thage si nari jena thage dhikase. Tulasi mana ranjana ranjita anjana nana sukhanjana jataka se. Sajani sasime samasila ubhay navanila sororo se bikase. To King Dasharat's door did I hasten at dawn, when he came into view with the babe in his arms. I was charmed by the sight of the foe of all cares, and say fie to those folk who were blind to his charms. Tulasi, infant eyes traced in black, pleased my heart, as they glanced like a bird's tail a-prancing in dance. Like a pair of blue lotuses, equal in grace, blooming brightly, my friend, on the moon they entrance. How fine, how full of wonder Tulsi's poem seems. Loveliness, charm, blessedness, immediacy, chamatkar. What gifts Goswamiji has given us. Tulsi's poetry speaks to us powerfully and intimately, whether we hear it through the vibrancy of Ram Katha or read it silently in the temple of the mind. Tulsi likes to punctuate the drama with little joys, dropping insights and poetic pleasures into the running stream of the story. And amidst all the action lies a quietude, calm, stillness, serenity, shanti. The sanctity of Ram pervades everything. At the beginning of the Manas, the poet says, Siya Rama Maya Sabajaga Jani, Karon Pranam Jori Jugapani. Knowing the world to be pervaded with Sita Ram, I bow with my hands joined in reverence. It is perhaps the most perfect line he ever wrote. And when he completed his great poem, he made sure that the last word in his Awadhi text, was the word Rama itself, left echoing through time. At least in this matter of the last word, I can emulate the great poet by saying that the Ramcharitmanas, in its great width and depth, its wisdom and beauty, its intimacy and universality, is more than just a story, more than just a poem. It is a divinely inspired, but also intensely human panorama.
Shabash, really. Okay, so we really was embracing the poetic spirit of Tulsi's Ramcharitmanas. So our last speaker of the evening, I will introduce, and this was going to be a very difficult act to follow, but fear not, we have Professor Philip Luckendorf. So Professor Philip Luckendorf is Professor Emeritus of Hindi and Modern Indian Studies at the University of Iowa, and globally recognized authority on Tulsidas and the Ramcharitmanas. His award-winning book, The Life of a Text, Performing the Ramcharitmanas of Tulsidas, received the A.K. Kumaraswamy Prize from the Association for Asian Studies and remains a foundational work in the field. A Guggenheim Fellow, he is also widely admired for his research on Hanuman devotion, Indian popular culture, and for his acclaimed English translation of Tulsidas's Ramcharitmanas for Harvard University's multi-classical library that Professor Snell showed us at the beginning of his talk. And he also served as president of the American Institute of Indian Studies from 2010 to 2018 and continues to play a leadership role in the organization. And he will discuss this evening the Golden Ramayana of Kashi, a topic actually dear to my heart because as I first learned about this manuscript from late Professor Kavita Singh, whose amazing lectures on the manuscript was just so profoundly beautiful. And I'm so pleased that you're going to bring this to this audience here. So please join me in welcoming Professor Philip Luckendorf.
Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, back. There we go. Greetings. By way of thanking everyone here, and especially Bapuji and the organizers, both in the Ramkatha community, Satsang, and here in Cambridge and at Harvard. I'll begin with a little Mangala Charan. Sujana Samaj Sakala Gunakhani. आप लोग जानते हैं ना? सुजन समाज सकल गुणखानी करऊं प्रणाम सप्रेम सुवाणी. ठीक है? The companionship of good people, virtuous people, is the treasury of all merit, all virtues. I do salutations with love and with eloquent speech, but maybe my speech won't be so eloquent, but we'll see. So, you know, when I talk to students and audiences in the West about the Ramayana, I usually begin by countering their assumption that it is a book, the Ramayana, like the Bible or the Quran or even the Rig Veda. Because I emphasize that it's a storytelling tradition that exists in many forms, has been popular for more than 2,000 years throughout much of South and Southeast Asia and even beyond. And as far as literary texts go, there are hundreds of them. Tulsi Ji again tells us, Nana Bhanti Ramaya Avatara. Ramayana kitne hain? Kitne hain? Satakoti apara. It's more than... मेरे एक गुरुजी कहते थे, A.K. रामानुजन कहते थे कि 300 रामायण होते हैं, लेकिन सतकोटि तो बहुत ज्यादा है. As you know, of course, the great Sanskrit epic of sage Valmiki is the archetype of all this, and we are fortunate to have two of the world's leading scholars and translators of it with us here tonight, Professors Robert Goldman and Sally Sutherland Goldman. And I just call your attention to their really beautiful translation, which is now available in a single volume. But in recent decades, the focus of much scholarship has shifted to embrace the variety of the wider Ramayana tradition, the great river of Ram Katha, in which no major text has ever been a close translation of Valmiki's epic in the modern sense in which we use the term translation. All of them are creative, independent retellings of a beloved story. And again, a pioneer in this scholarship is with us here, Professor Paula Richman, who edited the anthology Many Ramayanas back in 1991. And of course, as you all know, among the many major texts in regional languages composed during the last 1,000 years, Tulsi's Ramcharitmanas has become especially popular. Like many others, I fell in love, and like Professor Snell, I fell in love with this great work of Bhakti literature when I first read it as a graduate student in the early 1980s. And I became fascinated with how it had become so enormously popular and revered in a region in which the majority of people for centuries could not read and write. Obviously, they learned it through performance, through hearing and seeing it brought to life through such genres as Path, Katha, and Ram Leela. This became the subject of my PhD dissertation. I like the explanation of PhD that Bapuji gave today. But my dissertation became my first book, which is called The Life of a Text, and is a cultural history and ethnographic study of the Manas performance tradition over the last 4 centuries or so. But of course, bringing the Ramayana to life, how do I advance this? There we go. Bringing the Ramayana to life doesn't just happen from listening to a katha or watching a Ram Leela. Visual art, painting and sculpture have always been important in the transmission of the Ram Katha. In the 17th and 18th century, the Manas became popular among the Rajas and Zamindars of North India, and some of them commissioned manuscripts of it that were illuminated by painters and calligraphers. In the rest of my talk tonight, I'm going to tell you the story, the katha, of perhaps the greatest of these, the Kanchan Chitra Ramayan of Ramnagar, a suburb of Kashi. This is a picture of the brocaded silk cover of one of the 7 volumes of it, one for each Kand of the Ramayana. Sadly, This is a katha about destruction and loss, but it is also a katha about rediscovery and partial recreation through the collaboration of Indian and American scholars and the new possibilities of digital technology. Benares state in the 18th century was ruled by an upstart dynasty of zamindars who had become rajas, and they wanted their reign to be thought of as a Naya Ramraj. They built a grand citadel across the Ganga from the ancient Kashi, the city of Shiva, and they called it Ramnagar, the city of Ram. Their embrace of the Tulsidas epic, with its message of both dharmic royal authority and inclusive popular bhakti, as well as its literary artistry and sophistication, which Rupertji has just so beautifully brought out, led them to patronize numerous scholars and performers of the Manas. The fifth in the lineage, Udit Narayan Singh, was especially active in Manas patronage. It is said that he commissioned 3 tikas on the Manas. Now, tika, as you know, has many meanings. It's the tika that you put on your forehead. There's the tika that means a kind of a scholarly vyakhya, a kind of commentary, but that decorative sense is also important. A tika is an embellishment, an elaboration on something. And so one of the tikas that the king commissioned was a traditional written commentary composed by one of the great Ramayanis who was part of his court. But a second one, was the fully public Ram Leela of Ramnagar, which the king expanded from a 9-day performance into a month-long spectacle, 30-day spectacle that drew enormous crowds, and unlike many other Ram Leelas, involved the performance of the entire Ramcharitmanas over the course of the month, with the Maharaja always present on an elephant as both the principal Vakta and Shrota in the form of Shiva as the representative of Benares, of the Manas. But the third commentary was the one that I'm going to focus on today, an extraordinary illuminated manuscript commissioned by Udit Narayan in 7 bound volumes, illustrated with 548 full-page paintings. Created by numerous artists and calligraphers working for 18 years, this golden Ramayana, Kanchan Ramayana, clearly was inspired by the grand folio books of the Mughal emperors. It totaled nearly 1,100 pages, fully half of which, as I said, were almost 550, were full-page paintings, 14 by 18 inches in size, made with crushed mineral and semi-precious stone pigments and lavishly highlighted in pure gold leaf. Here you see from Uttarakhand a painting of the crow Bushundi's vision of Ram's Vishvarupa, or cosmic form. Made for a king and his close circle, this masterpiece was virtually unknown outside the Ramnagar court, and its existence remained only a rumor for 200 years. Many 20th century historians of Indian art believed that so-called Rajput painting was dead by the late 18th century, especially in the Benares region. And it had been superseded by the so-called company school of paintings produced for British colonial officers. This is another painting from Kanchan Ramayana. This is of Hanuman's encounter with Kalanemi en route to the Himalayas to fetch the Sanjeevani. The existence of this manuscript, had the art historians known about it, would have proven them wrong. Here's another glimpse of an amazing detailed painting from Lanka Kand, the first assault on Lanka by Rama's army. Now, I had heard of this manuscript from the Maharaja, Vibhuti Narayan Singh, when I interviewed him in 1982 during my research on Manas performance. He spoke proudly of it as a great achievement of his ancestor, Udit Narayan. And he emphasized to me that he said, this is not just another illustrated Ramayana. This is a drishyatika, a visible commentary on the Manas, because it was created by artists working under the guidance of Ramayanis and trained expounders in the epic, great scholars of the epic, and full of their own interpretations, their own bhavs, visually rendered by the artists. However, he did not offer to show it to me. It was locked in the palace library, and I had no opportunity to see it until more than 20 years later, when I was working as an advisor to a TV crew making a documentary about Tulsidas, and they obtained the Maharaja's permission to film some of the treasures in the Saraswati Bandar, the palace library in Ramnagar. For that purpose, a single volume of the Chitra Ramayan was removed from a locked case. There were 3 keys that had to be accumulated from 3 different people had them. And it was shown to us. I was permitted to turn over several pages so the camera could record them. Clearly they were remarkable, but I was not an art historian and I attempted no further investigation. My darshan of the book lasted only a few minutes. Nearly another 20 years went by before I heard of the manuscript again in an email message from the late Professor Kavita Singh of JNU. The Maharaja had passed away in 2000, and Professor Singh shocked me with the news that the Chitra Ramayan was being dispersed. That is, in the language of art historians. Someone in the palace had broken up its volumes and was selling each of the pages, 548 paintings, page by page, to art collectors. As sad as I felt to get this news, I was excited to learn that Professor Singh had been invited to put together an exhibition of some of the paintings at a new museum in Bangalore, MAP, the Museum of Art and Photography, a private museum. They had bought a number of the paintings, and they knew some of the collectors who had bought others. Professor Singh, who was a specialist on late Mughal and Rajput painting, was absolutely stunned by these paintings, by their beauty, and she agreed to curate a show, but she asked me to help her with certain tasks. My main responsibility was that she had chosen 75 paintings for the show, but of course they came from all over the Ramcharitmanas, and they were in no particular order, and each of them had text on the back. Each page of each painting had a full page of text on the back, but of course it wasn't the text that went with that painting. It was the text that went with what would have been the next painting, because they were bound like a modern book. So you had the text on the left and the painting on the right. So, and Professor Singh was not intimately familiar with the Ramcharitmanas. So my job, she sent me the 75 scans of the 75 paintings. I was wowed by them. But my job was to look at the text that was on the back of the painting, read it, identify where it was in the manas. This was easy because it's very beautiful calligraphy, and it's very much the manas that we all know. And each page had usually 2.5 dohas on it. So then I could go backwards to whatever had preceded that and identify the passage. So I sent her these little thumbnail explanations of what seemed to be going on in the paintings. And this saved Professor Singh and her assistant a lot of time. I did not realize at the time that she was terminally ill with a very aggressive cancer. And it was wonderful that I was able to speed up the work that she was doing on this text, which ended up being her final project. The outcome of her effort was a magnificent exhibition at MAP Museum in Bangalore called The Book of Gold that opened in September 2024. Tragically, Professor Singh did not live to see it. She passed away from cancer 2 months before it opened. But she worked on the documentation and on the catalog until literally the day of her death. And the exhibition was a fitting tribute to her memory and to the passion she brought to her final project. It was accompanied by even in the museum store some what we call merch. And I was presented with a t-shirt with one of my favorite Manas characters. You know who he is. That was my dakshina for a little talk that I gave at the museum. There was also a spectacular catalog with reproductions of all the paintings in the show and essays by Dr. Singh and other scholars, including me. And there was one other outcome of our work, which I will mention very soon at the end of this talk. But first, I want to give you an example of how I was able to help explain some of the paintings, and also to better understand myself the Maharaja's claim that the Kanchan Ramayana was a drishyatika, a visual commentary on the Manas. This painting, for example, from the long dialogue between Bhushundi and Garuda in Uttarakhand, initially stumped Dr. Singh. The upper register of the painting seems to depict the lifestyle of Kak Bhushundi under the 4 sacred trees on top of the mysterious Nila Parvat. By the way, I said he's one of my favorite characters, and the whole Bhushundi Garuda Samvad is one of my favorite parts of the Manas now. But the question was, what was going on in the odd vignettes in the lower part of the painting? When I identified the text page, it cleared up this mystery. The artist was illustrating a series of upama that Bhushundi used to illustrate the nature of delusion or misperception, moha, caused by maya or divine illusion. Bhushundi tells Garuda it is like when a man suffering from eye disease, probably jaundice, tells his friends that the moon is yellow. You see that at the center left. Then he goes on and he says, or it's like when a disoriented man declares that the sun is rising in the west. You see that at center right. Or when a person on a boat mistakenly thinks that objects on the shore are moving when actually he's moving, and you see that at the lower part of the painting. Or moha is like when children whirl around in play, twirl around, and then suddenly stop and tell each other that houses and trees are spinning around, and you see that in the central part of the image. But in identifying what the Benares artists were trying to depict, we were also helped by an extraordinary and unexpected discovery. Most dispersed manuscripts, such as the great Mughal illuminations of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, are incomplete and scattered among museums and private collections all over the world. Therefore, it's very difficult or impossible to reconstruct what they looked like when they were books. But back in 1977, an American theater scholar, Richard Schechner, was conducting research on the Ramnagar Ramlila with a grant from the American Institute of Indian Studies. He became friends with Maharaja Vibhuti Narayan Singh, who showed him one of the volumes of the Chitra Ramayana. And Professor Schechner said to the Maharaja, "You must have a photographic facsimile of this made, because what if your Saraswati Bandar burns to the ground? There will be no record left of this incredible treasure." By coincidence, at the same time, the Center for Art and Archaeology of the American Institute of Indian Studies was at that time located in Ramnagar, in a building rented from the Maharaja, and scholars and technicians there were engaged in a massive documentation project on Indian sacred architecture that would eventually result in a 14-volume encyclopedia of Indian temple architecture. Knowing this, the Maharaja permitted his 7 precious Chitra Ramayan volumes to be brought to the AIIS Center, one by one, and photographed from cover to cover with what was at that time state-of-the-art equipment. Text pages were photographed in high-resolution black and white film. Though this unfortunately meant loss of color and gold, it permitted the most accurate record of details of the calligraphy. Paintings were photographed as 35mm color slides. In all, some 1,100 images were made. A set was given to the Maharaja, and another was carefully preserved by AIIS, which moved its archive to Gurugram or Gurgaon in 1998, where there is a photo archive devoted to Indian architecture and art of over 2 lakh images. Professor Singh was thrilled to learn of the existence of this incomparable record of a vanished manuscript. And she was even more thrilled when the AIIS staff in Gurgaon quickly digitized the entire work and made it available to her and to her collaborators, including me, working on the exhibition and catalog. This allowed us to reconstruct the sequence of paintings and to understand individual ones in the context in which they occurred in the now broken up and dispersed books. AIIS shared its digitized images with MAP, the museum, and the museum added fresh, high-resolution scans of the paintings and text pages in the exhibition. The result has now been placed online in a turn-the-page digital format. That also allows you to zoom in on details of the paintings and text. So even though the marvelous Golden Ramayana of Kashi no longer exists as a coherent work, anyone, anywhere, with a computer and the internet can now see its digital avatar and experience something of the visual katha that was enjoyed by Maharaja Udit Narayan Singh and his circle more than 200 years ago. As with any katha, the paintings reveal, if you examine them closely, many interesting bhavas or interpretations, insights, a few of which I have written about in my essay for the Book of Gold catalog. I hope that interested rasikas of the Manas will discover many more in years to come. And I want to express my thanks to the individuals and institutions that I have listed on here for the help they gave me with this getting to know this extraordinary manuscript. And particularly, I want to express my gratitude to one of my own Manas gurus, CPN Singh, Chandradar Prasad Narayan Singh, better known as Bhanuji, who was one of my main guides in Benares in my research in the early 1980s into Ramayan performance. So, thank you all.
So this concludes our academic presentations. Thank all the speakers one more time. Yeah.
So, and I also want to thank Gina Kim for leading us so beautifully. Thank you. Very moving talks, and जब जान निसार करते हैं एक विषय में तो क्या क्या फूल खिलते हैं, हाँ? Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to the organizers again for this. And I want to say, so much subtlety in everything that you've put together. I was noticing that the performance we had at the beginning was in Rag Puriya Dhanashri, exactly the right time for the composition. So I'm very much looking forward to the performance now. Thank you.
पद प्रस्तुत करेगी और बाद में विनय का पद मिस्टर वैठा प्रस्तुत करेंगे। सबसे पहले जल्दी जरा जल्दी करो, स्पीडीली हाँ हाँ।
ए जी विचड़ी न चमकारे मोतिड़ा परोव जो पान बाय अचानक अंधारा था शेरे जोत रे जोतमा दिवसो वया जासे पान बाई 21,600 ने था शेजी बिजड़ी ना चमकारे मोतीड़ा परोव जो पान बाय अचानक अंधारा था शेरे अचानक अंधारा था शेरे जानिया रे जेविने यादो वस्तु यजान छेरे अरे कोई अधूरिया ने नो केवाय रे गुप्तर रसना खेलो अटपटा बिजड़ी न चमकारे मोतीड़ा परोव जो पान बाय अचानक अंधारा था शेरे अचानक अंधारा था शेरे निर्मल थईने तमे आवो रे मैदान माने जानी ले जो जीव तरणी जात रे सजाती विजातिनी जुगती बताऊ तमने बिबेड़े पाड़ी दो बीजी बात रे बिजड़ी न चमकारे मोतीड़ा परोव जो पान बाय अचानक अंधारा था शेरे अचानक अंधारा था शेरे पिंडरे ब्रह्मांड थी पर मारा गुरु पान बाय तेनो रे देखाड़ू तमने देश रे गंगा सती माँ बोलिया एवुने तेने त्यान ही माया लवलेश रे बिजड़ी न चमकारे मोतीड़ा परोव जो पान बाय अचानक अंधारा था शेरे अचानक अंधारा था शेरे
प्रणाम बापू जय श्री राम। सभी को प्रणाम। ये विनय का पद श्री पार्थिव भाई ने कंपोज किया है बापू।
सदगुरु वेद सदगुरु वेद बचन विश्वासा संजमयः निसय के आसा। तुम त्रिभुवन गुरु वेद बखाना, तुम त्रिभुवन गुरु वेद बखाना। आन जीव पावर का जाना। आन जीव पावर का जाना। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। राम चरण तजि नहीं न आनि गति। राम चरण तजि नहीं न आनि गति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। जप तप तीरथ जोग समाधि। जप तप तीरथ जोग समाधि। कलिमति विकलना कछु निरुपाधि। कलिमति विकलना कछु निरुपाधि। राम चरण तजि नहीं न आनि गति। राम चरण तजि नहीं न आनि गति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। करतहु सुकृतन पाप सिराही। करतहु सुकृतन पाप सिराही। रक्त बीज जिमी रक्त बीज जिमी बाढ़त जाही। रक्त बीज जिमी बाढ़त जाई। राम चरण तजि नहीं न आनि गति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। सुमिरु स्नेह सहित सीतापति। हरती एक यघ असुर का जालिका। हरती एक यघ असुर जालिका। तुलसीदास प्रभु कृपा कालिका। तुलसी तुलसीदास प्रभु कृपा का दिका, राम चरण तजी नहीं न आनी गति, साधु चरण तजी नहीं न आनी गति, सुमिर स्नेह सहित सीतापति, सुमिर स्नेह सहित सीतापति, राम चरण तजी नहीं न आनी गति, राम चरण तजी नहीं न आनी गति, सुमिर स्नेह सहित सीतापति, सुमिर स्नेह सहित सीता। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे राम, राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, राम राम हरे हरे, कृष्ण कृष्ण सद्गुरु भगवान प्रिय हो।
के समापन में अभी हमने विनय पत्रिका का एक पद सुना, जिसका कंपोजिशन श्री पार्थिव भाई का था। स्वर दिया श्री प्रतीक वैठा ने और तबला संगत की अभिषेक वैठा ने। ये दोनों लंदन से आते हैं और पूज्य बापू की फुलवारी के दो फूल है। इसके साथ सुरमई क्षणों के साथ ये संगोष्ठी का यहाँ पर समापन होता है। कल तीसरी संगोष्ठी होगी शाम 5:30 बजे से 7:30 बजे तक। शुभ रात्रि, जय सिया राम।